You woke? Time to get up. Welcome to Thought Your World No Speed Limit Podcast. I am your host, Alvin. I hope you are having a wonderful evening. I have been off for a while, and I apologize, but we've been off for 2 weeks or so. We had some family issues to deal with. But let's go ahead and get started with today's show. The Southern Poverty Law Center, who has launched voting rights lawsuits against Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Texas, among other states, has won a victory in Alabama. The courts have ruled that redistricting plans by the Alabama state legislature, which gave one black voting district to black Alabamians, did not rightfully represent the black population and caused them to be underrepresented. Because of this, the legislature, which is majority Republican and white, must redraw district lines to ensure that there are two majority minority districts in the state. Steve Marshall, the state's attorney general, says he plans to appeal the decision. The deadline to sign up for House primary has been extended to February 11, 2022. Now, I know the state very well. The governor is Governor Cardi B, and this year they're all up for re-election. So they had drawn these districts. And, you know, Alabama is a true red state. Not true blue, but a true red state. It is like Republicans dominate the House. They own the governor's seat. They pretty much own even the judicial seats in the Supreme Court in the state. And most offices in the state that are outside of course, urban districts are owned by the Republicans in the state. Now, this is funny and ironic because I've seen some of the ads, especially for Kate Ivey and another gentleman that's running for office. His name is Tim James, son of former Governor Fob James of Alabama, back in the 80s, maybe early 90s. They both talk about in their speech how Alabama doesn't have the problems of the rest of the country. You know, these people who are trying to divide us over race. Oh, that's not going to happen here because they banned critical race theory, and all these people are wrong, and they're standing in the gap to stop them, right? Well, then this lawsuit happens. It goes on with all the other numbers in the state that are a problem for the state of Alabama. Alabama is not the good guy in any of this situation. And let me give you a prime example. Alabama has a 27% African American population. Okay? That's the first number I'm going to give you. So of that, they decided they only needed one voting district. That one voting district stretched from Birmingham, Alabama, through about 4 counties, or should I say 3 counties, to Montgomery, Alabama, and then down into Selma. So it's about 4 counties altogether. It's a huge district that's drawn from Birmingham to Selma. Now, Selma is a smaller city, more of a rural city, because it's in a farming town, a farming location. Is agricultural. Birmingham is more industrial. It's a different area of the world. Yet it's represented by the same representative, Terry Sewell. She's the one black representative out of 7 districts in the state for 27% of the population. Now, if you do the math the way you're supposed to, divide the 7 into the 27%, you come back and you find out it's like 1.8%, something like that. It's 1.8% of the population. So round that up, it's 2. So that's 2 seats out of 7. 2 seats out of 7 that should be considered for majority minority districts. And that's all you have to do. If you draw it up that way, you get 2 minority districts. You make the voting system fair. That's why another reason why I wanted the voting rights bill. See, the manipulation of voting in Alabama is a huge problem. Manipulation across the board. Now, You can say, well, it's not based on race, it's based on party. Sure, okay, but that's still manipulation. If one party decides, I want to make this state dominant for myself, then what I'm going to do is draw the district so it makes it look like it. That too should be illegal, because it's destroying democracy. The whole idea of democracy is that there's a fair ground for both parties to operate, for people of different backgrounds to operate. But we're creating this imbalanced system because we created this system where one party wins. That means they get to draw all the districts and make that look better for themselves. So here comes the Poverty Law Center, who says, hey, look, this system is not fair, especially to minorities. It gives them one district. Now, of course, they're expecting more African Americans to vote Democrat, so that's a problem for the Republicans, so they got to stop that. That's why they only put one black district here. Just imagine, that's 2 more seats. They already don't have a majority in Congress because of the other seats. Now, there's a chance that they could still win a majority of the seats in Congress this election, and they could definitely win the Senate, because the Senate doesn't go by the same rule. It's, winner takes all kind of deal in the Senate. But let's try to make this a fairer system here. Draw those 2 districts. Meanwhile, like I said, Tim James and Governor Ivey can sit there and talk about all the great things about the state, including the fact that they banned critical race theory, which is the same thing that they fight against. They talk about communism and things like that they don't want to see socialism and communism here, yet they're banning critical race theory, which is something that the communists and socialists do. They ban things like that. So the real communists, the real communist, the real fascist and socialist here seems to be those 2, right? That's the way I feel about it. And then remember, Kate Ivey signed the bill that set up these 2 broken districts. Now, we can talk about other things in Alabama when it comes to race. So, like I said, we're 27% of the population. African Americans in that state are 27% of the population. 56% of the jail population is African American. Of the 900,000 registered unregistered voters in the state, 500,000 of them are African American. Now, whose fault is that? You can blame it on the Republicans, the Democrats, whatever. That's still an unusual number. The majority of the unregistered people in the state are still African American. That is only 27% of the state. That is absolutely preposterous. I don't care what the state says about, we're trying to make the system fairer. We're allowing more people to vote. So here's what I'm going to say. 2 things. First, if you're a felon and you're out of jail, because when you're in jail as a felon, this is why, think about this, 56% of the jail population African American, they don't vote. Secondly, if you're a felon and you're out of jail and you completed all the necessary paperwork now that you're out of jail, make sure that you go and get registered to vote, or complete whatever paperwork you have there so that you can make sure that you are able to vote in the next election. These are all important. I'll talk about more of this in another podcast. In fact, I'll probably bring up about how you can go about getting a voter ID if you can't get a driver's license. So if you can't get a driver's license, you can get a voter ID. In the state of Alabama, you have to go online and register for that. And when you register for that, you have to make sure that you put the information in so that you say, well, I don't have a way to, obtain this driver's license through, this voter ID at the office. Maybe you're too far from the office. Maybe there's only one office in your county. What you can do is you fill out the online application, and a person will come to your house or to your location, and then I guess they will interview you and decide and get this set up so that you can get your voter ID, and that way you will receive a voter ID. That is possible, but see, you're not told the whole steps about this. You're just told online you can get a voter ID. Go to such and such and such. They don't tell you the whole process. So we're going to talk more about that later. But in the state of Alabama, it's true. They tried to do things to make things more difficult. Like they said, they closed down offices. You have to have a personal state representative come visit your house to get a voter ID. Silly things like that. Even if you're a registered person that lives in the state of Alabama, they claim, well, we're trying to make the system fairer. We're trying to make the system. No, what you're trying to do is make sure that the system is set up for your party to win. That is so undemocratic, extremely undemocratic, and that's what you're trying to do in this state. I'm not saying that I'm a diehard Democrat, because I voted independent before, and I will vote independent whenever I feel like it. But that's my choice, my freedom. Well, black people voted in the last election, but when you're closing down polling places, when you're not putting the proper representation in government, that's still unfair. You understand what I'm saying? You can't do the things you're doing in the background. So more black people are voting because more people are standing in longer lines, and while other people are getting the convenience of shorter lines because there's more polling places for them in their districts. That's not fair. So we'll see how this turns out in the end, because like I said, all those other games they'll probably play if there's two black districts. They'll probably play all the other games where they'll limit how many polls there are. This state's even thinking about creating a poll police force. So watch out for that. Remember the Ku Klux Klans back in the day? That's what they were, the poll police force. They're going to create them to make the election system fairer. These are all their methods to do those things. Like I said, voting rights is a major issue in the state of Alabama. And again, those districts need to be redrawn. They'll probably take this all the way to the Supreme Court to try to get a ruling on it. That's the conservatives. We will see how that goes. I got a feeling they will rule against Alabama in this case. Biden. Well, Biden has decided to continue a Trump-era executive order and an attempt by Trump to privatize Medicare without the participants actually knowing. Biden claims that ending the program would have serious backlashes with the insurance industry. Here's a brief look at the plan, and I'm going to break it down piece by piece. Among the things that the executive order lays out a path for, here's one of them. Shift the Medicare program to private plans. So in other words, instead of you having your Medicare through the government like you think it is, it's going to be shifted to a private company. Expand private contracting between beneficiaries and providers, putting seniors at risk for higher costs and surprise medical bills. In other words, they're going to create their own contracts here. So these contracts that they're creating through these private companies, of course, it will be shifted onto the beneficiary, and then of course they're towards the providers. So that means you may get a premium that you didn't expect before, or on your bill. You may have to end up paying something on your bill, or you may have some crazy deductible that you didn't know was there that you'll have to pay because it's been shifted to the private industry. Now, these Medicare Advantage plans have been around since 1997, so they've been around for a good little while. Viva Health is one. Another one is Blue Cross Blue Shield. But those are the main ones that you think about when you think about these health. There are other ones. There's Kaiser Permanente. There's Health South. There's several different ones that are available. Now, like Viva Health. Viva Health is interesting because it's actually owned by the University Medical System. It is not. That is a different kind of insurance. It's kind of like Karma. If you ever hear Caremark Pharmacy is owned by CVS. So in other words, it's like a hospital owns a monopoly on something, right? It's like that plan is through the hospital. So their first thing is to try to get you to use their doctors at that hospital, so it's cheaper and keeps the cost in house, right? So then if they can't do that, then there's doctors outside that they may or may not carry. So the UAB has had some controversy because they've tried to cut United Healthcare out of their hospital because they've got their own insurance, first of all. And secondly, they claim it was all about cost, quote unquote. But I know that United Health, their attempts to cut United Healthcare out of the hospital have a lot to do with the fact that they had their own insurance in-house. So this same argument comes up when it comes to the advanced healthcare plans. Not all physicians are covered. And in fact, from my experience working for a contractor for the federal government on CMS, one of the things you found is providers are trying to figure out why their claim is not being paid or rejected is because they have to file that claim with the Advantage plan that this customer did not. This customer may have told you they were under Medicare, so you filed it with Medicare. They didn't even know they were on this Advantage plan. Didn't have to file it with them, and may find out that there's a different amount that they're going to pay than what Medicare would have paid for it. Of course, Medicare has an allowance. It sets up these fees for services. So that means that there's a certain amount that these doctors are allowed to charge Medicare for. That may not be the same for these Advantage plans, and a lot of times they're higher. So there may be, in fact, that the Advantage plan says, okay, I covered up to this point, and the rest of it gets sent to the mail in the bill for the customer. That's true. They do that. That's true. And like I said, this further restricts seniors' choice of providers in Medicare Advantage. In other words, it's kind of like, these providers get to decide which doctors they choose that cover under them. That's not like Medicare, which it can be covered by any doctor that decides to sign up for it. They've got a network of doctors that they want in their insurances that they allow and they cover. So you may be sitting at your doctor. As far as you know, he's covered by Medicare, but he may not be covered by United Healthcare. He may not be covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield. He may not be covered by United Healthcare or any of these other services. So then here you are, you got a bill. What do you do? But you don't want to lose this doctor. But they're telling you have to go to another provider because that provider is covered under their insurance. See, as much as Trump used to talk about that he was going to help increase your choice, your choice was limited anyway, and people don't understand that. So when you were under Medicare, you had the choice to choose the doctors that you had or keep the doctor you had. But now, because even with Medicare, because it's a fee for service, that means that you can be reimbursed for anything that's out of network. But with this, you can't get a reimbursement. They'll send Medicare literally send a check to the house of the participant for a doctor that's not on the Medicare network, and they can pay their bill with that. But the insurances don't cover it that way. So then that means you're receiving a bill in the mail. Your grandma, your grandpa, your parents even are receiving this bill in the mail. They're on retirement. They don't have the funds they had before. So now here they've got a bill that's unnecessary. So here we are destroying the Medicare system, and Biden's helping the cause. He's not here to help. Not like he said. He says, I'm going to fix the system. But see, Biden and guys like him fought to keep people like Bernie Sanders out because he wanted to expand the system, fix it, and make sure that everyone had public health care. But see, now the taxpayer is burdened with this. And it's actually going to burden the taxpayer, too. That's going to increase the amount of money that taxpayers have to pay out of pocket for this stuff to help the elderly people in this country. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Oh, Russia, 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 Russia. Yes, they're back in the news again. Russian troops have massed on the border of Ukraine as fears of possible invasion are imminent. Russian officials claim they are merely conducting exercises and shoring up security as NATO continues to expand. NATO ships and troops are gearing up for possible buildup in Eastern European countries. Ukraine is also gearing up to defend itself against a possible invasion. Russia wants NATO to stop and roll back expansion, but the West says no. And I understand why Russia picked now, because America is teetering. That attack on the Capitol left our enemies looking at us as a weak, failed nation. I'm going to let you know that right now. I apologize. I moved away from the mic. That January 6th, 2021, man, it looked like our country was a country teetering on the brink. So all these countries that have always been our adversaries say, hey, I see an open door policy to do what the heck I want. Then Biden's in office. They see him as weak. I don't see him as weak, but they see him as weak. So they don't think that America is still strong enough to take on these world issues because they've got so many internal problems. It's not just January 6th. Of course, they saw the BLM marches. All of this stuff, even though Russia probably had something to do with January 6th. I say this, and that's just going to the internal things because I've got a whole podcast on all that January 6th stuff coming up. Um, the Russians, the Russians have been kind of in the background for years. We kind of have stopped paying attention because all the terrorist things. We had our two Iraqs. We had the Gulf War. Then we had the second Gulf War. We had we've had the Afghan invasion. All of that was in the background. Korea's been acting up. We've been watching the rise of China. So we've had all sorts of threats. We kind of pushed Russia in the background. Russia didn't want to be pushed in the background. The whole time that this was going on, they were slowly slipping back into a totalitarian society because, of course, economically, Russia has suffered ever since the fall of the USSR, which was already a financial mess anyway. So it has fallen back into this totalitarian militarized state that it once was. And actually it never went away. And at times it has been rejected by the G7 and other world organizations. They have lost their seat or been banned for crazy things they've done. Look, think about it. Putin has literally had people killed. He's had people killed in other countries when they're not there. He had people assassinated with radioactive material, or as one of his opponents, his opposition leaders, he tried to poison and kill him, but he failed to do that. But that opposition leader decided to go back to Russia and is now sitting in a prison somewhere, and no telling if he's ever going to get out, right? So that's Russia. That's the old Russia. They've had problems with Chechnya, the Chechnyan rebels. These Muslim radicals in another part of the country. I guess you can call them radicals, but there's a Muslim minority that Russia kind of overlooks. The Chechens decide to, they've been cutting up in the country. It's given Russia this need to be militaristic, and of course NATO has been constantly expanding in the old Iron Curtain countries like Hungary and Czechoslovakia, especially Poland, the Estonia and Lithuania, who were both parts of the Soviet Union at one point, are now independent and NATO countries. So, and they are surrounded basically by either Belarus or Russia, and it's not a good thing for them to have two NATO countries that are right there that could cause attention, right? So this Ukrainian thing has been going on for a while. First they invaded Croatia, not Croatia, but I'll remember in a minute. But anyway, they invaded the peninsula in the Black Sea a few years ago. That was part of Ukraine, claiming that those people, they needed to liberate that, and that those people there wanted to be a part of Russia, the Crimea. That's what it's named, the Crimea. So they took that over. So that was a sign of a threatening Russia, that Russia was testing the waters to see what the world would do. The world kind of did a couple of pinprick things, There was a couple of boycotts, so on and so forth. And now everybody's threatening this time to be severe with their sanctions. But if you got troops on somebody's border, sanctions aren't going to do much. Now, of course, all the militaries are claiming they're going to send them stuff. They're sending weapons. I know the Lithuanians, the Estonians, they're sending weapons per the United States to Ukraine. Other countries are sending weapons. Germany's sending hats because they don't want to lose their big oil contracts with Russia. They're so worried about losing their oil contracts with Russia, they're only sending military hats, and they're probably going to be old, useless hats. Somebody else has done that before. In our wonderful World War history, you've probably heard about countries doing things like that, sending war hats when they don't have military equipment to send. Maybe that's a humanitarian goods, I don't know. But see, Germany doesn't understand. They're playing with fire too. And you got Russian oil, and you may be one of Russia's biggest targets. So watch yourself. Definitely Poland. Poland is one of those countries. A lot of these Eastern countries who are really, because Poland suffered a lot under the Russians, and Poland itself has had some issues in its governance. They are a country that probably will gear itself up to war when Ukraine is invaded, and there's a chance that they could get themselves involved in that conflict. Now, this being said, you really don't want your Eastern partners to get involved in that conflict. So the U.S. is thinking about sending 8,500 troops to the eastern countries of NATO. Um, Now, some of the other countries also are sending troops. Spain is sending their troops, some of their ships into the Black Sea, into the Baltic Sea. They're sending mine tenders, destroyers, and frigates, that kind of stuff. It's a real small amount of flotilla of ships, but they're sending them there in that area because they're anticipating what's going to happen. So if they're going to do it, most likely Italy and maybe Spain, France, who doesn't really participate in the military side of NATO, will send ships as well. Germany may send ships at some point. They've been trying to set up this, the European Union Army Force, Ready Reaction Force. But if Germany fails to participate, that probably will collapse that force if they don't participate in this. It requires them to participate. The U.S. to participate. Germany is the richest nation on board. I don't know if it's the most military capable country, because Britain's pretty capable. I believe France and Italy are pretty capable. But we're talking about fighting against Russians, who have more troops than any of those countries put together, more land mass. It is known that there's a chance that you would never win a war against Russia. Of course, now you do have a lot of countries that would be opposing Russia, and they'd have to go a long way to try to win that war. So it would be a bloody mess, and we don't want that right now. We don't need another war. America's trying to get over Afghanistan. That was a big mess too. That's another thing that the Russians looked at. America failed in Afghanistan. They're still in Iraq. We're still in Iraq. We still have troops in Syria. We have troops in Africa. We still have troops on the border of North Korea. We have Navy ships in the South China Sea, because China is also threatening Taiwan once again, which is something they do at least once every year. So looking at the overall global picture for the United States, United States kind of needs a slap in the face when it deals with foreign policy right now, because of all the domestic issues they have. And like I said, we had BLM march in the street because of police issues. Then we had the January 6th thing happen. Our politics in our nation is divided. We've got the silly Republicans going around talking about the Marxists trying to take over the country. I think it's more like the Marxists are looking at the world issues and saying, hey, you need to see what's going on in the world. And you got people like Tucker Carlson on the TV saying that we, as the United States, should agree with Russia. It kind of bothers him, huh? Yeah, that's kind of bothersome that he would say that we need to agree with Russia. I refuse to say that we need to agree with Russia, a totalitarian state. It's bad enough that we have Saudi Arabia as one of our allies. They're a totalitarian state, along with the Turks, who are also members of NATO, who now have in their possession Russian missiles because the Russians have traded with them. So, more power to the United States if we can find a peaceful solution to this. The Russians are being more aggressive than they have in the past. Like I said, with their weak economy, they're lashing out in the only way they seem to know how. And hopefully this will end peacefully. Like I said, the biggest issue is Russia wants NATO to stop and roll back expansion, but the West says no. And when I say by no, I mean like they don't want Ukraine to ever join NATO. But America and the West is saying, well, it's up to Ukraine if they want to join NATO. It is, but you also you got to understand the Western nations have always vetted everybody that's joining. So there's a catch-22 to that. I don't agree with Tucker Carlson, but I do agree that maybe NATO needs to hold back on Ukraine joining the fold. Because Ukraine, like I said, is currently not in the fold. But I would check yourself on that. They think that would be of course, the West thinks that's a great idea. Like I said, NATO is a problem. NATO is that issue that we've had from decades ago. Okay, it's a Cold War thing. We got it together because there was the Eastern Bloc countries, and the West needed a defense pact to protect themselves against invasion by Russia and the Eastern Pact, right? The Iron Curtain, as it was called. So that's what we were doing there. So then when that failed, when that pact fell apart on that side, NATO didn't fall apart. NATO started expanding, but it still has the same sort of goal of containment of Russia and Russian power. So that's why I said, like I said, the big boys have left Russia out a lot. They haven't joined the fraternity. They're not part of the fraternity. They're not allowed in, and Russia's feeling that pain now. And now that they're being backed into what they feel like is a corner, they're ready to strike. So it's up to us to try to solve this diplomatically so there won't be a hot war in Europe, and not we don't want to see World War III, because if Russia joins in, there's a chance that China will join in with them, and we really don't want that, because our Asian partners are definitely not as strong as we think they are to fight that war. You know, there's 2 billion of them. There's only 1 billion Indians standing in the way if they even join our side in this, and it would be a mess. That's just put it that way. Let's just put it that way. It's a war that would be a mess. It would be the casualties, the damage to all countries, including the United States, because the Russians and the Chinese have missiles that can reach the United States, and airplanes and weapons that can reach the United States. So you really don't want to get into a hot war with these folks. And hopefully we can avoid that altogether. Let's talk about Cardi B for a second. Just to switch to entertainment for a little bit, maybe a little bit lighter. Cardi B has won her libel case against YouTuber Tasha K, aka Tasha K, and this is going to end up being a message out to my fellow YouTubers and podcasters. The Like It rapper, 29, was awarded $1.25 million in damages on Monday by a federal jury that found KB liable for libel, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, according to court documents obtained by People. So Cardi B basically claimed that Tasha K said several things about her, was harassing her. One of those things was that she said Tasha K had some information that said that Cardi B at some time had a sexually transmitted disease. Another thing is they came after her child. They talked about her being a stripper and all these other things. They've said some things about Cardi B that she says weren't true. Now, the stripping part, I don't know if it wasn't true or not, because Cardi B had said she was a stripper, but there was a lot of statements that were made about Cardi B from people that claim to know Cardi B, and they went on Tasha K's show. And Tasha K is a sensational kind of shock jock type vlogger. That's what she does on her show, and I find some of her show distasteful. I've watched it when I've been with my wife, so and I just don't like the show. She doesn't like the show either. But if you're going to be that kind of YouTuber, it's a good idea to make sure that the information you got is true, that you don't become harassive and caught up in emotional issues with the whole situation, because you are putting yourself out there. You see what happens to people on TMZ. They get sued all the time when they go after celebrities. So you got to be careful. There are people out there that won't take it. You know, even YouTubers talking about other YouTubers, you can end up getting sued. And $1.25 million, that's a lot of money. I don't know how much money Tasha K is getting. I know she has several million followers, so she's getting YouTube contract checks here and there. But if any of that stuff was fake, then YouTube's going to pull that down. Then she could lose her YouTube, by the way, through the lawsuit. She could actually lose the control of her YouTube and the money she gets from her YouTube because of that. So everybody has to think about this. When I get on here, I try to vet my facts. I try to use news sources and newspaper sources for everything that I say on here. I try not to say anything too shocking or mean about other people, including folks like Tucker Carlson, who I just can't stand. As far as his stances, I can't stand, or his news reporting, which is mostly fake news. Not all fake news. He uses facts and twists the facts. Let's put it this way. Let's be honest with it. He uses facts and he twists the facts to create his truth, so that he can get to the people that believe the stuff that he says, even if those facts aren't exactly the truth, right? And sometimes he just totally blows the facts altogether. He doesn't tell the truth. But that's beside the point. We're talking about Tasha K here, and and Cardi B. So Cardi B wins her lawsuit. That's $1.25 million that is going to be paid out. Probably a little bit more because there's court costs and other things involved. And this person is promising, Tasha K, that she's going to appeal it and take it all the way to the Supreme Court. She's also on the internet still talking. And now she's going after people on YouTube who are coming after her. I'm not exactly coming after you, Tasha K, but don't come after me. I'm just reporting what I see here. And like I said, that is a problem on the internet, period. You've got to be careful what you say. I understand it makes a lot of money to be that shock vlogger and say things and get interviews with people who may know something about somebody and all that stuff. Then again, you can't trust the people that you get these interviews from. You drag people into your mess and they get dragged down, but at the same time, it costs you money. The whole idea on YouTube is to make money. You don't want to get sued because you said something. The same thing with endorsing products. Be careful about what products you endorse. You can get sued for that too. So be careful what you do and who you deal with and what you say. It's very important that you vet everything you say and make sure that you have facts. Oh, I've got this and I got that. Then once you get to the point you're starting to get to name calling against people, talking about their children, all those things are things that you can get sued for in court. So please be very, very cautious of how you go about doing that. Tasha K, like I said, sorry that this happened to you. Wow, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad to see that happen to somebody. Anyway, enough of that. Well, the rumors are out that Mr. Tom Brady is retiring. Reports are coming out that Tom Brady may be hanging up the cleats once and for all. He's got 10 Super Bowl appearances, 6 Super Bowl titles, 20 years in the league, most hated man in the NFL right now. He always has been, plus, he's got he's had all these wonderful things. He's probably got the most touchdowns, most playoff touchdowns, all those kind of things, because he's been in the league 20 years. So, the guy, whatever you think about him, he was an awesome quarterback. And what I think about him as a person, I think he's a good person too. But, I don't like his politics necessarily. Don't know exactly how his politics are, but I think I know which way he leans on that. And, he had Deflategate, as well as the other issue that his team had about cheating, about listening to the other coaches' headsets. Yes, that was happening. That really, really was happening. He's still Tom Brady. He won't be in this year's Super Bowl because this year is the Rams versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Wow. How did we get to the Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl? Now, I saw the Rams possibly getting into the playoffs and winning the playoffs, but the Cincinnati Bengals, they got past Kansas City, which is, I guess that's okay since Kansas City has been to 3 Super Bowls and won one of those, right? So they've been 3 Super Bowls in a row. That's a lot of Super Bowls to be and have been in. What else can I say about Tom Brady? You know what I'm saying? 20 years in the league. How many quarterbacks can do that when the average person in the NFL only spends 2 years in the league? That's 20% of Tom's career. Two years is 20% of Tom's career. It's 10% of Tom's career. 2 years he spent 20 years in the league. That's 10% of his career. So, the other 90% came from the other 18 years he spent in the league. He spent there longer than most people. He's 44 years old. He was still, I ain't gonna say he was at the top of his game, but he sure was in a very good place in his game this year with the Packers. I mean, he was getting the team to us. So he got him to the playoffs. Didn't make it any further than the second round, but he did get to the second round of the playoffs. So you can't complain too much about that. But he's decided to retire. Maybe it was just too much going on the Buccaneers team, because there's some issues with the Buccaneers team after Antonio Brown left, and it wasn't Antonio Brown's fault, but there were other issues with the team. Players are deciding whether they're going to stay because it's contract year for them. Brady's probably deciding whether this is the best time to hang up the contract because the team ain't going to look the same, and he needs a supporting cast at this point in his life in order to continue playing. And if he's not going to get that supporting cast, he's going to say, hey, I need to hang up the cleats because it ain't worth the time. And I don't blame him. I absolutely don't blame him. Like I said, he had a wonderful career. You know, he won 5 Super Bowls with the Patriots and 1 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He wanted to prove a point. He proved his point. He proved that it wasn't just the coach at the Patriots was the reason why he was winning. When he got to the Bucs, he proved that he could win the Super Bowl. That it was him. That he is an absolutely good player. And we still don't like him for it. But anyway, that's how that goes with football. But good luck, Tom Brady. Hope you enjoy retirement. Look, that's it for Thought You Were Woke No Speed Limit podcast. It's been a wonderful broadcast today. I love talking to you guys. Hey, look, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. I want you to leave a note below in the comments. Tell me how you felt about today's broadcast. And please hit the notification button so you can be notified next time there is a show. And y'all have a wonderful evening. Peace. You have been listening to Thought You Were Woke No Speed Limit podcast.